Trump is currently ranking #1 in the polls for the 2024 presidential election. If Trump is reelected, his administration could start another trade war with China. How much did the last trade war hurt the American people and the American businesses?
So trade frictions between the United States and China are very old. They precede the Trump administration. And indeed, with the transition from the Trump administration to the Biden administration, none of Trump's trade policies have changed at all, even a little bit. And therefore, I think it's probably wrong to look at the trade war, as a manifestation of the Trump election or, well, one person. The United States and China have had a trade imbalance for many, many, many years, and that imbalance continues today. If today is an average day, about $2 billion worth of goods will flow across the Pacific Ocean. About $600 million will be in U.S. exports to China, and about $1.4 billion will be in Chinese exports to the U.S. So about 2.5 times, and that's quite a large imbalance. And that has been the cause of the trade wars. That has continued for many administrations, and President Trump simply took measures really to highlight that, and then used some measures unusual that were not in accordance with World Trade Organization regulations to try to address them. I think that whether or not President Trump returns to office, the tensions in the trade relationship are likely to continue and perhaps even expand. And it doesn't really matter whether it's a Republican administration or a Democratic administration. There's only a small difference between the two administrations on how they look at China in general and trade with China in specific. The Biden administration is currently working on their response to the Trump trade war policies, and that is mostly tariffs, which we could discuss. But they have not changed anything. So maybe it's worthwhile to spend a minute on what President Trump did and how the Chinese reacted to that. President Trump, through a series of tariffs, put on tariffs of between 7.5% and 25% on most Chinese imports of $370 billion worth of imports coming into the United States every year. And the Chinese side responded to that with a roughly equal amount of tariffs on American imports. And so today, lasting until today, we have reciprocal tariffs. So the average American export going to China today faces a tariff of 20%. And an average Chinese export going to the US today has a tariff of 19%. So about the same. It's about reciprocal. And I think on both sides, those tariffs have hurt American companies. I would say that tariffs on Chinese products have had many unintended consequences that were not predicted by the Trump administration. And what we found is that many small and medium-sized manufacturers in America who had relied on parts, materials, equipment, tools, supplies, chemicals coming in from China, they have had a hard time. And we estimate that as many as 250,000 jobs were lost as a result of those tariffs. most of those have since been recovered. The unemployment rate today is 3.5%, but there was a period, a transitional period that was very bad. Um, in addition, American products being exported to China also face tariffs. The Chinese government has been relatively generous at providing exclusions to those tariffs. So if an importer of corn or wheat or oil or coal or natural gas or other products wish to apply for an exclusion to the tariffs, the Ministry of Finance of China and the Ministry of Ministry of Commerce generally have given those tariff exclusions. So American exports in 2020 leapt 17%, and in 2021, last year, 21%. So a total of 38% increase in U.S. exports over 2 years. So that's really quite good, and that's largely as a result of the tariff exclusions. So trade is a very complex system, network, that has been very much challenged by tariffs, by COVID, and by the war in Ukraine. And yet, trade has continued to expand. U.S. exports to China have continued to expand. And so businesses have been dynamic and have found ways around much of the trade. A lot of the American companies who had imported from China are now finding that they're importing from Vietnam, Malaysia, some more from Mexico, and other places. So now we are about 3 years from when the first tariffs were put into place. I think that most companies have found a new equilibrium. And while we think about the trade wars of the future, we are happy that we have a new equilibrium, and now we're looking forward to hopefully expanding our investment, expanding our trade mutually because we find it mutually advantageous.